everyone. Thank you so much for joining this webinar. I am Ramon from the Yeastar training team, and today we will be continuing with our second lesson of Yeastar Certified Security Specialist training courses. In this course, we will be talking about firewall settings and auto defense settings. So these are the two security mechanisms in our S-Series VoIP PBX. The firewall settings will be working as a static defense system for your telephone system, and the auto defense will be working as a dynamic security system for your IP PBX. With those two major security mechanisms, we will be able to really secure our telephone system built based on the S-Series VoIP PBX. Before we actually get started, you can always follow us on our social media. We are on Twitter, we are on Facebook and LinkedIn. And if you're interested in more of our features, you can subscribe our YouTube channel. You can just search Yeastar to subscribe our channel, and you will get our weekly update of our features, functions, configurations, and of course updates about new products and firmware upgrade. Okay, so now let's talk about the two major security mechanisms that we have in our IP PBX. As we have introduced, the first one is built-in firewall. This is our firewall system, and this is what we are going to be talking about now. First, let's talk about built-in firewalls. Before we actually get into the configuration, I would like to spend a little time explaining why we have this firewall. So the basic logic to configure a firewall is to allow all trusted access and then block all other access. So you can imagine your telephone system as a house that you are building. As long as you want the people who live in the house to communicate with outside world, you will have to leave windows and doors for them to get in and get out, and for visitors to get in and get out. So as long as you have doors and windows where you are leaving access for untrusted outsiders, for strangers, people who you don't know, who you are not sure about, there will be ways for them to get in. So if you need an absolute solution to secure your system, the only way is to remove any doors, to remove all the doors and all the windows. And so you really you have a isolated house that nobody can get in nor get out. But this is not okay for a lot of telephone system, because when it's come to a SIP-based telephone system, other than normal phone calls that is based on SIP protocols that has to be processed through internet, there are other needs. Like for example, that you have to sometimes connect your PBX to your branch offices, PBXs. You will have to register your mobile phones to the PBX, also as extensions. So and you will have to sometimes register remote IP phones, remote extensions. So all those features will require access from public internet. So what we can do here is to adding a screening system to our PBXs. We only open certain access for trusted for trusted visitors, and for all the strangers who try to get into the system, we will totally block our system. We will totally block the access. So this is very common. This is just like the security we have in like big mansions, big houses all around the world. So now we have, I think now you are clear about the basic concept here, and now what we need to clarify is what kind of access should we be opened. So who are the people we trust? And this will be crucial to configure firewalls. So now let's move on. So first one will be local network access. That is to say, you are building an IP PBX. Will they have to be open for or your local IP phones to register? This is normal. Otherwise, your telephone system won't work. And local computer should be able to visit the IP PBX. Let's say the administrator of the system should be able to access to the PBX because, well, let's face it, we are using a web browser. We are using a browser server structure system. So this is the whole. This is only in this way does it make sense for the service provider to use any computer to get into the system. So the first one we need to do is to open up a access for local network visitors, and this is what we're going to do. Okay. Now let's go to the web GUI of the system. Okay, now here we are. So you click on settings, and in system you will find security. Click to get in, and the first thing you will see here is the firewall. First of everything, we need to enable firewall. This will be step one. And as I have said, the the basic logic is to leave the access that we need to keep for trusted visitors and block all other access for strangers. We will need to firstly add trusted access for most trusted person, the local network. So here we open up to add a firewall rule specially for the local network. So in name we can just put in local network, or you can put in any other name. This is only for you to identify these rules. And here we have description. Well, this description is also only for you to know what this firewall rules is exactly for. So we can here we can say allow local network. Okay, very easy to understand. So here, and then we have action. So what do we want to do with this firewall rules? So here we have three different options: reject, accept, and ignore. So if you have select accept, that means this rules is for trusted visitors, and all the visitors that match the rules that you have set right below will be accepted and be trusted and accepted. And here we have reject. So if this rule is for rejection, then that means all the visitors who match the rules you set below will be considered untrustworthy and be denied directly. And then also we have ignore. With ignore, that means, okay, well, the system will not directly deny the visitors, but will not interact with each other. That is, or to be more precisely, if certain IP address or certain outside visitors send data package to the system, well, if the visitor actually match the rules you have down below, the system will not reject it, will reject the data packages. The system will receive the data packages but will not respond. Okay, so there are three basic ways you can set your firewall rules. but as we have said, we want to only make exceptions for trusted visitors and block all the strangers. So here, what we build here will be the exceptions. So we want to accept them. And here in protocols, we have three options: UDP, TCP, and both. So if we want to allow all local visitors to get into the system, we need to choose both. And here we also have a way to narrow down the list, that is to put in the MAC address of certain equipment. So that means if you only allow, for example, the computer of the administrator and of course the IP phones to get into the system, and all the other devices, even though they are local, they cannot get into the system. Well, there is one option. You can put in the MAC address of said equipment in here. Of course, it has to be local equipment, and outside, if the equipment is not found in the local network, then of course the MAC address won't make sense here. So this is only an option, but if you do not want to make such a strict rules, or you don't have to limit the equipment, the visitors to one specific equipment, you can just leave it in blank. That's totally okay. And here we have IP address, so you can put in your local IP address. Let's say 192.168.7.0. So, or let's say all the local address is in the network phase 7, and here we can put in 255.255.255.0. Okay, so this way we have narrowed down the visitors, narrowed down the list to all the local IP address whose internet phase is 7. So that will be all the equipments with IP address 192.168.7. This will be our local equipment. And so in ports, we want to leave all the ports available for local equipment. So we can put in 1, 2, 6, 5, 5, 3, 5. So now we have make the IP PBX available for all equipments in the local network. But of course, as I have said, if you have more strict rules, you can surely change the MAC. You can put in the MAC IP address, or you can specify the IP address to a specific one by putting the actual IP address of the very equipment and changing the subnet mask to 255. So this is the way to do it. And if you really want to, you can also make rules for the port. So well, you can you can have more security this way, but well, the firewall rules will be a little bit more complicated. We will be talking about this just a little bit later in our other settings. Now let's put in 0. Let's put in 0, and well, this is it. So now we have our first rule for the local network visitors. And then we need to add access for remote devices. Well, when it comes to remote devices, well, you only need to add this access remote access if you have remote connections. That is to say, if you have allowed remote administrator, for example, if your administrator can also manage your IP PBX from his house, if you want to do that, then you will have to have remote access for this IP PBX, and you have to secure this remote access. So you will have to follow this part and do the relevant configuration on your firewalls. And also, if you have a Linux connection or other mobile extensions, you will also, that means you will have to open you have open access public internet for your mobile extensions to register to the PBX to get to intercommunicate with your PBX while this extension is not in the office, because the whole idea of including remote extension is to allow the users who is not physically in the local network to be able to make business calls and receive business calls when they are not in the office, physically in the office. Perhaps they are on a business trip, they are in their home, but if they have work to do, and they can do it with their cell phones. So if you have this kind of remote mobile extensions, or remote extension, other IP phones in other locations that is registered to this PBX, you will have to also open up remote access. So you will have to also secure your remote access, and of course, if you are connecting your branch offices through the public internet, you will also have to get a remote access. So basically, only in under those three scenarios will you need to open up a remote access to the public internet, and you will have to secure it in the firewalls. Otherwise, you don't really have to you don't really have to open up remote access, and you can just ignore this part. Okay, now let's see how can we secure our remote access. So now let's get into the firewall rule settings. So when you open up a remote access for your PBX, you will have a public IP address. This is very important. There are a bunch of ways where you can get the public IP address. We have mentioned that in our former lessons. You can either purchase one from a service provider, or you can get DDNS a service. So you will also get a permit updated, real-time updated IP address or domain for your remote connection. So we will not repeat how we do it, how to do that. But here, let's just assume we already get this IP address. Okay. So here we have in name we have remote access, and in description we can just add in anything we want. Remote, let's say remote administrator. Okay. So now we want to accept, naturally we want to accept the remote administrator to get in. So here we would like to firstly put in the public IP address that we get. So let's just put in the IP address. Okay, let's say this is the public IP address we have, and of course we want to narrow down, we want to only limit this public IP address to get access to the PBX, right? So we put in 255.255.255.255 right here. Okay, so because this will be the public IP address that we open up for the service provider, for the PBX. So basically all the visitors coming from the public internet will be accessed to the PBX through this IP address. So we really need to take care of this rule here. For the port information, of course, you can put in all the port as we have shown you before, 1 to 65535. So this means all intention to get access to your PBX from this IP address will get accepted. But if you really want to, to avoid issues and problems, we do suggest that you set your firewalls this way. But if you really do want to secure your system and you are really sure what you are doing here, you can always specify the ports. For example, we are adding this rule specially for remote administrator, right? Okay, so the administrator will get into the system through web, and as you know, the port we use for web access here is, as you see here, 8088. So this way we can just open up 8088 right here, especially for the administrator get access to the PBX through web GUI. So this means the system, the administrator can put in the IP address, the public IP address, plus the mapped out port, or whichever port that is, the mapped out port to get into the web GUI. But because the mapping will be taken care of in the router, so when you reach to the PBX, it will be the default port, web access port 8088. But if you have changed this, well, you will need to put the real port, the port the changed port in here instead of the 8088. Well, if you keep the default setting, then 8088 will do exactly fine, and this will be the access we have, especially for the administrator to get into the system. Okay, here we go. And well, we need to continue with other port that we are going to use. For example, we do have remote branch offices or remote extensions. No matter what, the connection will require SIP registration or SIP intercommunication between the two equipments. This way, we will need to leave the default SIP port, the UDP 5060, open for this port in this PBX. So here we would put in remote register, and well, in description we can add anything, only for us to really know the purpose of this rule. I can say for remote extension, you can put in whatever you want. And here we want to accept the intention to visit the PBX from the public IP address that we already have. And well, let's just finish up setting the public IP address here, and then in port we can just put in 5060. And also you need to remember, if you have changed the port for SIP registration, for SIP communication, the UDP 5060, then you need to put in the customized port here, whichever one that is. But if if you keep the system default settings, it will be UDP 5060. This is the port through which the system, the equipment will communicate with each other through SIP protocol. Okay, so now we click Save to finish up this rule. And the next thing we will need to do is to create a rule for the data streams, so the actual conversation. Well, usually it will be sent through port 10,000 to 12,000, and so this is what we're going to do here. We put in the name. I won't repeat the same process again. You know what I mean. We put in the name here for the data stream, for the media, for the conversations. So when we finish the SIP registration and the system has be connected together, then we will be making phone calls, right? So the media data will be sent through another port, which will be that's a dynamic port. That will be a dynamic port number from. It will be either one from 10,000 to 12,000. So we will need to open up the 10,000 to 12,000 here. So I won't repeat everything all over again. You know what I will do. I will accept, and I will put in the name. It will probably be RTP, right? Because it will be for the media the media data package. So and here in the IP address, we put in the public IP address that we have. We'll have put in twice. So here the only difference here will be the port number. Instead of the other numbers we have put in, the 8088 for web and the 5060 for SIP. Here we have the 1000 to 1200s. This will be the 10,000 to 12,000. This will be the ports for us to make actual phone calls. So if we fail to leave access to this port, then even though the SIP registration will be done, we will have the remote we will have the remote PBXs or remote extensions registered to our PBX with no problem at all. We won't be able to make phone calls, make actual phone calls, because the media data won't be sent and won't be received. So this will be the port that we will have to do right here. So once again, I like to mention that for when it comes to remote access, if you really know what you are doing, so you can do it as what I have just done. We only leave out the port that we will be using to finish our mission. But if you are quite clear here, well, you can always, to avoid any problem, when you register extensions or when you get connections or you're making phone calls, you can always accept all port, or you can put in all the ports here, so you won't get any problem at all. Both way will be okay here. Okay, let's continue. The next thing we will need to do is to make access for SIP trunks. Well, SIP trunks are also based on internet, but they are special lines offered by the service provider. So in most cases, they are perfectly safe. Well, you can always trust your connection to your service provider, especially when you have separate connection for your audio services. So this is what we're going to do next. We will guarantee our access to the service provider, to guarantee our access for the SIP trunks. Okay. Now let's get to the web GUI. Okay. Let's click Add. Okay, so here in the name we can put in SIP trunks. Okay, so if you have multiple SIP trunks, you can just identify each one of them with the name and the description, and of course we will allow the access. So here we put in also. So here we choose accept, and in description we can leave it in blank, or we can identify this very which service provider that is, or which number that is. That depends on you. Okay, so So here we can put in the IP address of the service provider of the service provider they offered. You can put in the IP address here, but sometimes they offer a domain. If they offer you only a domain, you can just choose domain here, put in the domain name, and that will be works perfectly fine for you. So now here we take domain as an example. This is not a real one. I just make it up. You need to understand that. Okay, so let's say this is the domain, and here we put in the domain name, and this will offer the access to the server of the service provider. And here, in port information, we suggest that you set two rules for the port 5060, which will be the port for SIP for the SIP registration and the SIP data packages, and then we put in the 10,000 to 12,000 for the media for the actual conversation. Okay, so here we put in firstly 5060 here, and we click save. Okay, well, we will need to do the same thing for the medias. So the port by default will be 10,000 to 12,000, but sometimes for the media, the service provider will use a dynamic server. So for media service, they won't have a static IP address or domain name, just as the one we have for the SIP registration. So under those circumstances, well, SIP trunks, and in description we say media server. Okay, and well, so under those circumstances, we cannot really really define the IP address here. So well, we can always put in 0.0.0.0, meaning there are no limitation here. 0.0.0.0, because well, the media server, if the media server is dynamic, then well, it will get changed, and you cannot make any rules right here. And in port, we just put in 10,000 to 12,000. This is it. Okay, so there are, once again, I like to repeat, there are two circumstances when it comes to the media server of the service provider. It can be dynamic, it can be static. If it's dynamic, if it's static, then you just put in the IP address or the domain name, there will be no problem at all. But if that is a dynamic one, so there won't be a static IP address or domain name for you to put here. So you just put in 0.0.0.0, meaning no limitation on this. All the packages sent through 10,000 to 12,000 will be accepted. This is how you make this thing. This is how you make this. Okay, media. Let's make it perfectly clear. And well, that's it. So basically, that's it for the SIP trunks. When it comes to SIP trunks, the SIP communication access will also be 5060 by default. So we just open up the 5060 for trunks, and of course for the media, we need to also leave the 10,000 to 12,000 for the SIP trunk as well. So you can make phone and receive phone calls by the service provider. And well, because the SIP trunks will be the only access for you to intercommunicate with the service provider. So well, you will need to make sure that your access to the service provider is opened and guaranteed. Otherwise, you will have problem. So this is very important. Sometimes it get ignored, but you need to always remember that you need to, if you have enabled firewalls and you want to set up the firewall this way, you will have to leave access to the SIP trunks. Okay, now let's continue. Now we have make access for local connection, we have make access. For remote connection, we have make access for SIP trunks. There are a few other access that we need to guarantee to ensure the feature of our PBXs. Okay, so that will be the next part. The other trusted access that we need to guarantee. So let's see what access are they. The first one is NTP server for the system time, and then the SMTP server and a POP3 server for your email services. Well, the NTP server, as we have mentioned in our basic level configuration courses, the NTP server is mainly for the PBX to synchronize with NTP server, to synchronize their system time. And well, the SMTP server is so the PBX can send out emails, and the POP3 server is for the PBX to receive emails. Of course, you will have to get those informations from a service provider of NTPs, of the time server, and of the mail server. Here we make a few examples because, well, the information from server to server might be different. So what I do here is only an example. Okay, now let's get back to the web GUI, and we click add to add one rules. For example, for your SMTP server, and we want to accept the access. So here in action we choose accept, and in protocol we will choose both to let the mails in. And of course, here at last we have to put in the IP address of the SMTP server for your mailbox, or the domain name. In many cases they will offer you a domain name, so you can put in the domain name right here. And in port, you can put in the port information. If you are not sure about the port information, you can always put in 1265535 to allow all ports, to allow access through all ports. This is if you are not sure which port do your mailbox use for SMTP service. And of course, if you really know about which port do they use, you can specify the port information here down below. Okay, so the way to configure everything is totally the same. So here we will have to leave once again the local connection, the remote connection, the SIP trunks, NTP server, SMTP server, and POP3 server. So all the functions that we will all the access that we need to maintain the features and functions of the PBX has been configured correctly. After you are sure that you have done everything you need to do to leave the trusted access for trusted visitors, you can just click on drop all. That means all the other intention to visit your PBX that do not match the rules you have set right here will be directly denied. So this way you can really secure your system. And then let's talk about IP auto defense. So IP auto defense, as I have said, is a dynamic defense mechanism. It is mainly designed to protect your system against DOS attack. Because, well, when a hacker initiates a DOS attack, they will send large numbers of data packages to your server. So we want to really limit the numbers and the frequency of certain IP address sending data packages to your PBX. So this is how we design this IP auto defense. So here by default we have three rules. You can see here very clear. You can see very clearly here. So if a certain IP address send over 40 data packages in 2 seconds through UDP 5060, then this will be considered by the system as an suspicious action, and this IP address will be dropped directly to the blocked IP address. If so all the intercommunication between this IP address will be just denied. So here we have all the 3 rules. Our suggestion will be that you keep the default rules, and sometimes your system or sometimes your PBX or sometimes your equipment get dropped to the PBX by mistake or by misunderstanding, of course. For example, if your connection, if the connection of your IP phone is bad, then your IP phone, when they try to register because of the physical connection, the system, the IP phones will send a lot of data packages to the PBX to try to get to register to the IP PBX. Not to mention, if you are using a IP phone that we do not entirely support, there might be issues like this. So basically, if you find out that a totally legit equipment you are using but can keep failing to get access to the PBX, for example, you try to log in through your computer by web GUI, but you want to get in through web GUI with your computer, but you keep failing to get access, you can use another computer to get into the IP auto defense and to see if your equipment is get blocked in the IP blocked IP address list. So if you are sure one of the equipment is totally legit, there are no problem with it, you can just delete, and it will be and this IP address will be available again for this equipment. Okay, so this is our IP auto defense mechanism. Okay, I think that's all for this all for the security mechanism that we're going to be talking about in this lesson. Thank you all for your attention, and if there is if you are interested in knowing more about our company, you can always follow us on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. And also, if you're interested in knowing more about our equipment, the features, the functions, and how to use the PBXs, how to configure the PBXs, you can always subscribe our YouTube channel. You can just search Yeastar and find us and subscribe. We have a lot of great stuff on our YouTube channels for you. Okay, thank you so much, and see you in the next lesson.